Howdy, Aggies. Welcome back. You're listening to the Aggie Central podcast where we are drinking all the maroon Kool-Aid anytime it's available. And it's in abundance right now because fall camp has started. And in just a few short weeks, we are going to be beating the hell out of Sam Houston State. Now, look, that's an 11 a.m. game, so you need to start hydrating now. Like yesterday, it's going to be hot, but it's going to be hella fun. Can't wait for the season to start. In the queue tonight, I'm going to be talking about my season prediction. I can't give you the whole thing tonight, but I'm going to give you the first half, all the way up until Alabama. Okay, so just tell you right now, it's going to be spicy, like putting death sauce on a burrito on game day. So we're also going to look at which players might have a possibility of cementing themselves into Aggie lore. We're going to take a look at some of the records that we have right now and which players are currently making those records or have a possibility for doing something. And then just look at some of the old ones that we've got. It's kind of fun, and I've learned some things as I've looked at those. So it is going to be full of maroon Kool-Aid. I got a big picture like you get from the Dixie Chicken, so get your cup ready because I'm going to be trying to pour into it all night, okay? Again, if you haven't, like and subscribe. We live in a like and subscribe type of world, a share and comment type of world. I'm okay with that. I have no problem with that. If you want to do one or the other, please, by all means, do that. That would make me plenty happy. But I'm not here for the charity clicks and the charity likes and subscribes and all those kinds of things. I want you to be here because you're enjoying the content and it's engaging. And if you do the charity stuff, then I don't get better. Okay? So I think that's pretty close to an Aggie core value as it gets, because we don't want anybody to lie, cheat, or steal. And I want to grow this thing in the right way, not buy off of fluff. I ain't here for the fluff. Jimbo's not here for the fluff, and neither are you, hopefully. But enjoy. If you like it, subscribe. Share. That helps out. Biggest compliment I could get is for you to tell me, oh, you and so were talking about it word of mouth. That's a bigger thing for me. Had that compliment this last week. Appreciate you for sharing it. The person who did, you know who you are. It really helped prop up things, and so those are ways you can help me out if you want to help me out that way. But I want to earn it, and that's the way it's going to be. Okay, so we'll do this thing the right way. One more thing. Tell me where you're coming from. Where are you listening from? Are you in East Texas? Are you in South Texas? Are you in the Panhandle? West Texas? Are you even in Texas? Are you in Australia? Where are you listening to? I even think, did we have somebody from South Korea in the comments? Tell me where you're at. Tell me where you're at. I'm in DFW currently, and in about 3 weeks I want to be in Aggie land. So if we can't do anything, hopefully this gets you and connects you from those places to Aggie land. So before we talk about this season prediction, it would be worthless probably to not talk about fall camp update to start with. And along with fall camp update comes Jimbo Fisher's press conference. We had one last week, had another one today. Take you through some of those, what my takeaways were. Going back to last week, I think this happened Monday or Wednesday. Might have been after the first practice on Wednesday, I think. Jimbo mentioned in particular that Zune had a COVID. He said he had a COVID, not had COVID, but had a COVID. I just thought that was interesting. But so he's been held out. I've been told he is back at practice today. And then I was watching film, and so he wasn't there, and that made sense once I re-listened to it, right? I also did not see Foster at practice in the short clips. Now, that was the short clips that I'd been able to see, which is not much, practice 2-3 hours long, 2-minute clip. What can you take from that? Just, you got to be careful with those kinds of things. So, not to get up in arms, battered Aggie syndrome can easily creep up on us very quick. But Foster was not there. Been told he's back. He's on the sidelines today. He's back in shorts. So, maybe something was going on. He might have been a little banged up. I'm not sure. I'm not really that worried about it. What is interesting to think about then, just going off a quick situation, if that happens, who would back that up? And it looks like Wyckoff would probably be running, in that spot and he's going with the 2. So if Foster goes down, Wyckoff, very capable guy, and step right in there, right? And then for Zune, it looked like Aki was there. Okay, so we know what he can do when he plays, and he's been a little in and out, but it seems like the confidence is there from the coaches. So that's an interesting one to note. Again, not real worried about it. Zune's back. I imagine we'll be getting Foster back here pretty quick. These guys are going to get banged up. Don't need to get worried about it, okay? So they're tough, and they know how to play with, some of the bumps and bruises that they're going to get. A couple things I noticed from the fall camp film that I have been able to see, which again is limited, but urgency is very noticeable. Very, very noticeable in camp so far. I don't see people slouching, you can expect these kinds of things out of the first 2-3 days. I get it. But I think the urgency is there. And we're probably going to talk about maybe some bulletin board material that hopefully will hold through fall camp a little bit later. And but I think that urgency is likely to stay at a high level. A couple of standouts that you would not have thought of right off the bat. I mean, I have said my piece and been my lovingly critical about some folks, but Jalen Jones looks fast. He looks quick. His feet look maybe better than I've ever seen them. Brian George looks crisp, a guy we haven't seen since early last season. I think did he go against Kent State or Colorado maybe? He's looking very crisp. Evan Stewart is on a tear. Guy's going to get balls thrown to him. I don't know how many. It's going to be a bunch. Andre White looks huge, like big, very big. And a couple that I didn't think I would have seen or taken note of just yet, to be quite honest. But Labius Overton, Shamar Stewart, and Anai White, guys that coming in with this last class. And we're going to talk about a little bit later, too, about why that may be and some benefits that we're going to get, because I'll get into Jimbo's second press conference here in a little bit. Toon Meese looks fantastic. McKinley, Rakes, Diggs, Antonio Johnson all look very motivated. So very good news. Go ahead and take a sip of that Kool-Aid right now. If you haven't already, I'll do it with you. All right, that's just water. We're getting hydrated, right? Because I'm getting ready for that 11 a.m. kickoff. A couple other pieces to note. You hate to hear this, but it does happen. And we want to wish these guys well. But Hezekiah Jones and Donnell Harris are medically retiring. Jimbo mentioned this. And a couple guys that their heart was there. It just doesn't work out for everybody sometimes. So wish these guys the best. Hope their ailments are improved, and I hope their experience is something that they'll be able to take with them to the next level, do some coaching, whatever it may be. But we want to wish those guys well. It's again, it's just you hope that everybody gets out there and can be a star, but just not quite there. A couple questions came up about Chris Russell, just to address those real quick. He has had something going on as well. I think it was connected a little bit to the Anaya Smith situation. Not incredibly certain or sure about what that looked like, but I'm trying to check into a little bit. It doesn't seem to be a big deal either way. And he's backing up probably Andre White or Edgerrin Cooper probably at this point. But we need a backup, so I'm not trying to downplay that by any stretch of the imagination. But he's in practice and he's going, so whatever it is, I trust our coaching staff's going to take care of it and do the right thing and do right by him. They have so far, and I have no reason to expect they won't, so I think things will be taken care of. But there was a press conference today, so let's get into that because, just think about it. What if the information came out that a chain was not going to be playing, or he was out, maybe out 2-3 weeks, something like that, or let's say Damani Richardson or Antonio Johnson was going to be out because of grades or something like that. That'd be a pretty big reason. We might want to take that into consideration when we're going to do a prediction. Okay, we're not just going to go fly out this prediction. I'm not here just to blow smoke. I want to give you some reason, and I want to give you some thought behind this. Okay, so I'm here to talk to you and give you a little dip so you can touch your toe into Aggie land for a little bit, right? So I'm not here just to talk for the sake of talking. That's not what y'all are here for. I want to give you some thought, something to make you think while you're driving home from work on Monday or this next week to get you to next week's podcast and or closer to the football season, right? So if there's information like that, we need to know about it because it factors into our prediction, okay? So Elijah Robinson talked. And when Elijah Robinson talks, I listen. I take notes because this guy's got a lot to say, assistant head coach at this point. And we can glean a lot from what this guy's got to say. So specifically right off the bat, he talked about Mckinley Jackson, Rakes, and Shamar Turner. This is one I've had trouble seeing in practice as well. I wondered, is he out? What's the deal? But he's talking about him, and this gives me a great sign about where he's at. So motivation's there. He's ready to turn up. Rakes, let's also talk about Rakes for a second because this is a 3-star guy, like .88. Just missed out on a 4-star, but he was one that I was very high on. Again, guy that makes me think of Dalen Mack a little bit. Got some nice get off, but a big guy. Even did a little bit of running back, I think, goal line kind of situations, right? They're not handing it off to him on the 5-yard line of their own territory, expecting him to go the length of the field or anything. But we just got a commitment from a couple guys, Bertrand, I think is how you pronounce it, and Samu. A little bit of a shortening in some of these names. Difficult, right? Give me a little slack. But these are some big guys, 3-star guys, okay? So look where Rakes is at right now. And think about these guys, because our recruiting, we're going to have some splashes. I told you that's going to take place, but we're going to have some 3-stars. And this recruiting staff is going to dig into those 3-stars. We're going to get high-quality 3-stars, okay, when the ones that we take. And the one that we just got in Bertrand, he's coming out of Philadelphia or Pennsylvania, somewhere Elijah Robinson's territory, okay? So he's continuing to recruit that area very well and getting very good prospects from there, okay? So Rakes, great to see that development this guy has done, and where there's a will, there's a way. You don't have to be a 4-star. You have to be a guy that wants to give effort, wants to play, and that this coaching staff can trust. Mckinley Jackson seems to be dialed in. His name's coming out of a lot of people's mouth, including Jimbo's. And that's good news to hear because this is really the veteran of the team. Remember last year we had a bit of an issue. There was a ticket, arrest, something going on. I don't remember all the specific details, but he was out a couple games. We paid a little bit of a price probably against Kent State. So good to hear that this guy's right where we need him to be. Now we got a few more weeks to go, but leadership is there from this guy. He's ready to show these young guys what needs to take place, okay? So one thing Elijah Robinson mentioned was just that, these new guys, they got to work behind Clemens and Peavy and Leal, so they've seen what it takes. Remember, one of the reasons why we hired Jimbo is because he knows what it takes. He's lived that life for that championship. So he's not trying to figure it out. He's gone through the process of getting that championship. And so whenever he sees effort in something that's not at the level that he's had experience with, he can call it out. These guys have seen what high production looks like, these younger guys. So the standard has been set and a culture has been created, and that's what we wanted most out of this, in my opinion. A culture of hard work, a culture of high motors, preparation, guys that know how to get more out of themselves than just moping along, okay? So that is something that, again, very interesting, very thankful to hear about, okay? So one of the things he mentioned about this situation that we're getting into is with the defensive line is that they have to work as a unit. He talked about his kind of defensive philosophy there. He wants to close the pocket. He wants to give the edge guys the time, but he also wants to create pressure from the inside. So he said for that to happen, they've got to work as a unit. They can't just go off, on a tear by themselves. They're going to have to Keep the lanes closed still. You can't just overload one side and then let somebody get through. This is exactly what Alabama tried to do with Johnny after the first year. He's next level, so they still couldn't do it, but that's what they want to do is keep those lanes closed. So, and then you want to make matchups. He's looking for matchups. He's wanting to maximize personnel. Think about also what we did back in 2012, and go back and watch that game against Alabama. Spencer Neely was playing nose tackle that game, and he's only dialing in at that time around 295, 298, I think. So what is he doing getting in the backfield? And he did it quite often because he was cross-facing on the center, and he was getting on his shoulder faster than that guy could make it work. And that matchup was a big factor in that game. He got in the backfield more than Alabama's had somebody get in the backfield, especially if that thought of caliber type of player. But Spencer was quick, he was a hard worker, and he had a motor like you've never seen. So where those things exist, we can maximize their potential. So getting on to Jimbo. Jimbo is something else. My goodness. And so I was listening to a certain other press conference the other day, and it's kind of getting into talking about what do you enjoy most about football. And some people talk about, well, like I love to get those wins, winning that big game, beating your rival, this and that. You know what Jimbo likes? Jimbo likes practice. He's very different than Allen Iverson. He likes practice. If you just listen to him talk, the things that he says just tells you how much he loves it. I'm sure he enjoys a win just as much as the next, but he's out there every day. And it's like you enjoy going to work when you like the people you work with and you get along with them well. He just likes the people that he works with. He likes these guys playing, and he's not vague about it either. So it's not disingenuous. Listen to what he had to say. So he said he likes to watch the young guys come in and get the big eye. And what he means by that is like they come in and what they do is they see something that they weren't prepared for, and that they're shocked. They're just shocked, right? They're like, oh, okay. And they second guess themselves, and they're not sure if they belong anymore. And then he says he'll watch them, and then they do something, right? They achieve in some sort of way. They get a win, and then the smile comes up, right? And then they start to figure out, oh, I belong. And he sees that. That's growth right there is what that is. That's what Jimbo is looking for out of these guys, and that's what he gets his jollies on. He wants to see these guys grow. And that happens in practice. That's what he loves. He loves practice. So, man, if you just had any doubts, Jimbo is he's just perfect. The guy that we needed for this, our time and our place at the moment, wherever we're going to be. I'm not guaranteeing any results from these kinds of talks and these kinds of things, but this is the guy that we wanted. Wow. So, having said that, drink the Kool-Aid, please. So, another thing Coach Fisher mentioned was that the players are responding really well to Durkin. So Elko leaves, Durkin comes in, coming over from Ole Miss. You got to worry about that, right? Because as we're going to talk about some of these predictions, we're going to be talking about some of the offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators, and new head coaches that we're going to be facing. And you can't just take for granted, oh, new coach equals W, right? That didn't happen with Leach. So when we talk about those kinds of things, it's important to know how the guy's transitioning. And one thing that he said that really settled me down was that he says he's got great command when he's on the field. And great command means that he's able to go ahead and speak to the players authoritatively, but also not in a threatening way. So that makes the players feel safe. They're not always dancing on eggshells, but that they also know who they need to listen to for their guidance on their development. And so this was probably the best thing I've heard on Durkin so far. I'll be looking forward to hearing more about it and in the future. With that being said, these were my main takeaways from the last two press conferences. And I wouldn't really there's nothing of huge note, nothing that makes me want to take a step back and say, oh man, I'm really second guessing this now because of that. Yes, I did mention a couple guys sitting out. I think even like today, Moko is sitting out. He's got his shorts on. He's probably participating, but they might be a little bit more contact today, and they're going to do some things like this where they hold some guys out. Okay, not the biggest deal. So nothing major is coming up. This is very, very good. So that leads me to my prediction, which is that I don't have any major reasons to say, okay, but remember this, we talked about that. So instead of thinking we might win or lose this game, I'm going to now say, okay, we can do the opposite of that because of this uncommon situation that was going on. It looks like we're going to have the guys we thought we were going to have. So we're going to make our prediction based off of our normal depth chart, what we thought was going to take place. Okay, so we will try and get into some of the specifics, but not bog down in it so much, because this is going to be an overall general prediction, and things are going to change throughout the season. So we're not going to try and take every little thing into account, but we want to give enough so that it makes sense. Okay. Before we do that, though, let's spice it up a little bit. Okay. What I have seen is that, and it's been said, Olin Buchanan asked this of Jimbo in the press conference, and that people are saying that we're an 8-4 team. We're an 8-4 team. Even Vegas is saying it, really, because the over-under for regular season wins is 8.5. So you're going to bet the under that we're going to win 8 or less games, or you're going to bet the over that we're going to win 9 or more games. And people are thinking that we're an 8-4 team. Makes sense. We won 8-4 last year. People have even said this last August 4th was Texas A&M Day for going 8-4. I'd rather that than it be May 7th, though, wouldn't you? Of course we would. So we'll just leave that right there. However, I guess based off of history, 8-4 is fine. That's not where we think we're headed, though. We're trying to do something different. Now, look at the juice, though. The juice is at minus 140. So that means you got to bet $140 to win 100. So instead of the juice being 110, which is, you're going to have to pay $10 to make a bet, essentially is what that means. No. You got to pay 40 to make that bet. Well, now it's getting some people thinking, so why would the juice go all the way up to there? Well, it seems like it probably started at 110, and people have been betting the over, so they're making that bet more expensive. You can't win as much if you bet over 8.5 wins, meaning that you think we're going to win 9, 10, 11, 12 in the regular season. So you're going to have to pay more if you want that bet, because people are thinking that's what it's going to be based off of the juice. Okay, so you got to, whatever you bet, you're only going to win 70% of that instead of being able to win 95% of that. You see the difference? So it seems like, and what Vegas wants to do normally is they want to have that line right in the middle, so they got about 50% of the bets on one side, 50% on the other, so they're guaranteed the juice from everybody. Or if they can get lucky, they'll get everybody to bet on the wrong side, and then they'll clean up. All right. Well, general consensus right now is that we're going to win more than 8.5 based off of where the betting is at this point. So, do I think that? Let's find out. So let's start. What's our first game? Sam Houston State. Right. 11 a.m. September 3rd. Right. Have you started hydrating yet? Let's get on with it. And then it's going to be Appalachian State, right? So these two games, W's. That's who's predicting an L. Don't predict an L. You might get run out of town. But let's talk about why you need to watch these games, okay? And I've said it multiple times. I'm a big proponent of watching these games all the way through, into the fourth quarter. I will stay maybe in Kyle Field until the post-game press conference comes out, and then from there I may even go. But I'm going to see every string play as I can. Why? Because first off, and let's talk about the Kent State game from last year. Did you know that with 4 minutes left in the third quarter, we had scored one offensive touchdown? One offensive touchdown. I went back and looked to kind of see, and there were a couple interceptions right from Haynes King. I think one of them was specifically Demas's fault. However, that ball was thrown just a little bit behind. Demas caught it, tried to catch it kind of like this, hit on his arm. I'm gonna still put this on Demas at the time because you need to be with your hands. You try and catch with your arm or your chest, you're just asking for it. So even though it was behind him, should have been like that. But that's in the past. The others, we had a couple of forces by King and some more inerrancy going on. Okay, all right, fine. But I just want to point out then, because we wanted to check back on that, some people were thinking, well, maybe it wasn't that big a deal. And to a degree it wasn't, okay? Haynes King actually did set a record. We're going to talk more about that later in that game. But the struggle was there. As mentioned, we had scored one offensive touchdown with 4 minutes left in the third quarter. We had 2 field goals, and then we had a pick 6 from Leon O'Neal. So that's not the kind of game I'm looking for when we play Sam Houston State or Appalachian State this year. I wasn't looking for that last year either, and that threw up red flags for me. Watching that game and then seeing how the rest of the season played out with 8-4 makes a lot of sense to me. Does it make sense to you? I mean, who wants to really can say, well, we said that and that's the way it worked out. I think that plays out a lot of times. We need to dominate Sam Houston State. Did we dominate Kent State? I didn't think we did. And we ended up losing to Mississippi State. The Arkansas game, Ole Miss, and then LSU. When we were right there looking at 9 wins. And we just didn't. We let that pass get down there. The LSU game was just too close. We needed more space. So I'm going to watch these games really, really closely. I want to see how labored it looks. I want to see when do our starters come out. Are they coming out in the fourth quarter? Or are they coming out after a series in the third? What's the score at halftime? I think the score was 10-3 at the end of Kent State. Is that right? 10-3? So look at these games. I think they're going to tell you a lot. If nothing more, think about it this way. When the second and third string come in, how are they doing against Sam Houston State? And why does that matter? For me, it matters because if those guys are putting it on Sam Houston State and App State, then that tells me that's who. It gives me a picture of who has been pushing the ones. Have the ones been going up against fluff in practice? Or have they been going up guys who are pushing them, right? Jimbo Fisher says that competition basically stomps out complacency. So I want to see what the level of competition is that's behind our number ones, and because that gives me a pretty good idea. Not that it was like that last year. I think we had other things going on last year. We could talk about those, but you can think about the Sumlin era. There was a couple games that I think we might have even been behind at halftime. That's unacceptable, especially in these games. My goodness. So that's what I'm going to be watching. Do I think these are going to be big wins? Yes. I'm hoping. I'm looking. I don't want to see, oh my goodness, no more than a touchdown by the other team at halftime. No more than 10 points for the game for sure. I'd be much more satisfied with, a field goal only. And then I'm starting to look at okay, how many times did they cross midfield? And how many first downs did they get? I'm going to be looking at those kinds of things closely after the game. Okay, so very, very interesting things to think about whenever we are taking into consideration these first 2 games. So they are cupcake games, but there's more to see than what we generally think. Getting on to the next 2. We've got Miami coming up right after that, and then Arkansas, then Mississippi State, and followed up by Bama the first half of the season. So I think that our season is big-time contingent upon Miami and Arkansas. Okay? So you got Mario Cristobal over at Miami taking over the reins there, and you've got Pittman over at Arkansas. Arkansas beats us for the first time last year in, I think, 10 years. So they're like 1 for 10. And we had like 9 in a row. So these are concerns because both of these teams have a bit more seniority on the team. So let's start off with Miami, okay? So recruiting classes, going back 4 years and to the most recent, 17, 11, 11, and 13 were the recruiting classes. Okay, not bad. That 17, I believe, was in 2019. And so that was 1 year after Jimbo. Jimbo's first year in, I think, was right there, 16, 17, somewhere in those. So it's not unheard of. We have that as well. The 11, I think we went like 3, 4, and 8 after Jimbo's first 3 years, and then number 1, of course, last year. So the talent level, there's a bit of a gap there. But I'm a firm believer that once you get a guy into their third, and particularly their 4th year, so maybe a redshirt junior or senior, that you could easily count on a 3-star being a 4-star. Now, I don't think that necessarily applies that you just get an extra star for having been here and been around for that many years. But I think it's a pretty good rule of thumb from 3 to 4. I don't think it really goes from 4 to 5. Okay, so they are quite experienced along a lot of their in their position groups. Now at QB, they do have a guy, Van Dyke. He was the offensive rookie of the year last year, I believe. So, or freshman rookie of the year, something along those lines. He was good last year. He's a solid guy. That's a name you want to know. Okay, so he is going to be being coached up. They're going to be running by their offensive coordinator, Gaddis. He has been taken over from Michigan last year. Very capable guy. Of course, he's in his first year with Miami as well, just like Kevin Steele is on defense, along with Cristobal. So Van Dyke at QB, they like to throw downfield, and that's probably one of his main interests that he's got. And they've got a couple of weapons to do it as well. So they've got Restrepo at wide receiver, and then they've got Knighton at running back, a bit more of a bruiser type of back, and they do have a scat back type as well. So Gaddis is kind of their main guy that you want to know, and he's a guy that's not really, I would say, he's not committed to necessarily just one system. He's more of a matchup type of guy, and he might have his scheme, but he's not in his scheme for the sake of being in his scheme. He runs his scheme because he likes to get the matchups where he wants to get the matchups. He likes to get a lot of the matchups between wide receiver and linebacker, as well as running back to linebacker. So his, I don't know, famous saying is speed and space. And so what he's trying to do is he's going to try and match up a running back, particularly a running back that runs routes well, and get them on a linebacker so that he can get them in space. He's going to do the same thing with his wide receivers, and he's going to work them in ways that's going to get a matchup where he can get them the ball and let their speed work. That's what he wants to do. Okay, so I mean, doesn't it sound like the spread in one way, shape, or another? It does to me. I don't really know how else to see it, but that's what they're going to try and do. Now, they average a junior across the offensive line, right? And we're going to be averaging somewhere in the sophomore range across ours. We've got, I believe, Layden is a junior. Fothery going to be a sophomore. Foster a sophomore. Moko, I think, technically a sophomore too. Zune, I believe, got maybe the medical redshirt last year. And so if that is where our line plays out, and Zune's a freshman, then we're averaging a sophomore. They're averaging a whole nother year of experience on us. So, whereas they may not have the same talent we've got on there, maybe it kind of works itself out a little bit. So keep your eye on that. Now on defense, Kevin Steele, they've been, I don't know, it doesn't really matter. You've got the differences between 4, 3, 5, and there's people that say the same thing about Durkin, whether or not he was a whether or not he was a 3-3 kind of guy, or if he's a 4-2-5 or 4-3-4, what that's going to be. So he's a 4-2-5 guy, which just means what they're going to be doing is they're going to have 4 down linemen most of the time, and they're going to run 2 linebackers. They're going to have a third linebacker, but they're going to play a lot of nickel, which really means they're going to have a bit of one of their larger larger DBs, and he's going to be kind of the rover. He's going to be the do-it-all. It'll be their equivalent of our Antonio Johnson. So he'll be playing up in the line sometimes. He'll be going back into coverage sometimes. You want guys got a little bit more size to him, so you can make some of those tackles up front. And that's what they're going to do. I have heard it said that their insider for Miami thinks that their defensive line is somewhere along the C+ range. So that's something interesting. We're going to have a pretty talented offensive line. That may be quite a nice matchup for us to hone in on. They did really well in the transfer portal, though, so things could shape up a little bit differently than what they're projected to do. We weren't big in the transfer portal. Arkansas has been big. Miami's been big. So these are going to be 2 teams in particular that, depending on how they work out with their transfers, can depend upon what their success is going to be like. And that's the way Arkansas operated last year. So they've got a lot riding on that. My thought at this point is, and where my confidence is in our offense this year. I think our offensive line is going to be really solid and legit. I think we're going to be able to score quite a few points on this one. I think our defensive line is just going to be really underrated to start off with. I think that's part of the prediction where we're at with 8-4. I think it's based off of history, not what we can do with the talent that we can do. How do you project wins when you've only got like 60% of your production coming back? Okay, well, 60% of your production is pretty close to 8-4. I mean, technically it's 75%, but you get the idea, right? So that's where it's 8-5. So people may be thinking we should be a 9-3 team. That would be 75% of the production coming back. I think that has a lot to do with it. I think our offense is going to be so good when it comes to being able to run the ball and throw it down the field. We're going to be able to put up some points on Miami. So I've got this down as a W, which is really good news in my mind. I went back and forth. Like, okay, they've got some experience, but they do have a new coach. But that doesn't mean that they're going to, flop the first year. So can they beat us? Yeah, they can. I'd put this one at 60-40. If you're looking at an ESPN matchup predictor, that's probably where I would set this at the moment. So we'll revisit it after I see the first 2 games. And I might have a little bit stronger prediction. I might have a weaker one. I don't know. We'll see. So 3-0 to start off. Arkansas and Mississippi State kind of go hand in hand. They're running different offenses, but the defense looks very similar. A lot of 3-down linemen, and these defenses for both these teams really work off of the linebacker. Linebacker is a big deal for them. So they are reading right off the bat. So they can go from having 6+ in the box to dropping 9 in the blink of an eye. Okay, because they've got those 3 linebackers right there that are ready to pounce, but they can also drop back into coverage very, very quickly, and that's kind of the strength of their scheme. The problem with their scheme is that if you make the wrong read, then you're in a world of hurt, and you've got mismatches. And they're going to try and do that. So that'll be also what they're going to try and do along the defensive line, because you're not going to go 3-on-5. I mean, not usually. You wouldn't expect that's going to work. Worked out for Arkansas last year, even then, which is why we had so much trouble in the first half. But they're going to be a lot of slanting, trying to create imbalance in that way and get pressure that way. And then they'll have their linebackers fill in the gaps as needed. But they're going to be doing a lot of reads. A lot of what they were able to do successfully in their spring game was when they RPO'd it. And so that's something that will help keep those linebackers honest and possibly get them to make a wrong read. And when they made a wrong read, you had somebody wide open down the field, because you're read and run, you come up, you've got to make a quick adjustment on a receiver who's acting like they're getting ready to block, or a tight end, and then's going out for a route. If you don't have a quick linebacker, how are they going to catch up? It's not a DB. Okay, but that's what they're doing. So I don't think Arkansas is going to sort of sneak us on that again. I think our offensive line is going to be much more solidified and upgraded this year. That off defensive line rush is not going to have the same impact it did last year. I also think that one way or another, we're going to have a quarterback that's going to help us to kind of balance this, who can get outside the pocket and who can run. Calzada was just awkward in the pocket last year, and that was something that they didn't really have to think about. They weren't really worried about him running, right? And how could we run him much? Who was going to play if he got banged up? We were in a spot last year with that. So we can really utilize the QB this next year when it comes down to that. And this is the same thing almost exactly that happened with Mississippi State. Make it worse, we're trying to run a 3-down defensive lineman situation. I just don't think we were quite prepared for that and knew what we were trying to do. We had some success against Mississippi State whenever we were really hitting the edges hard, because when Clemens came in off the edge, and it was really just too much for them to kind of, to handle off the edge. And I think we're going to have a lot of that more this year. We're going to get spread out, so I don't know. We can roll into that defense if we need to. I mean, that's part of Durkin's ability. Will we want to do it? I'm not sure. We're also going to be probably more equipped offensively again to score more points. Now, Arkansas has got Jefferson coming back, big QB. They've got Catalon coming back, a very experienced DB. I think he was out about half the season. Pretty sure he was there when we played him. I could be mistaken on that. He might have come back a little bit later. Trying to think, who else have they gotten back? I believe Trey Williams is gone, which was the left edge rusher that gave us so many fits. But his counterpart on the other side, I believe Nick Williams, is coming back. You got Bumper Poole coming back, a senior. Man, it's like, how long is this? Does he play for BYU or something? This guy seems like he's so old. And he's got another year of eligibility, so he's coming back. They've got quality running back, and again, they're experienced through the offensive line. I think whenever I looked at it, I think they were really close to averaging seniors across the offensive line. Throw in some heavy sets with an extra lineman, tight end, and we're looking at a very, very physical game again. They play us tough every year. I think the difference this year is going to be our ability to get through that defense a little better. You remember how things kind of tightened up on Johnny after his first year, kind of got a little sniff of him, and then they were going to kind of shut him down. They did much better keeping him in the pocket second year around, although he was trying to be a little bit more of a pocket passer to up his draft stock. But you get the idea. What they've now been able to see on film, they know what to expect from him, and we've got that now from Arkansas better. We've got that now from Mississippi State better, and our offense is looking to make moves. One thing I didn't mention that did come out of the press conference, which people have noticed through camp, but there's been some personnel change, and I think that double check me on the names. Damian Craig has moved over to coaching quarterbacks from wide receivers, and this has been an area that we had been critical of. And I think Cooley moved over to wide receivers, and then Dickey is with the tight ends, although he's offensive coordinator. A little odd for him to work with the tight ends, but they've all done this. This is what Jimbo talked about. They've all done this, and so we're looking at maybe checking the status quo a little bit. It's easy to get complacent or thinking you're getting taught in one form or another, and some shakeup might be good for our receivers, quarterbacks, and tight ends to learn from. So I think our offense is where our strength's going to be this year, which is it's a good problem to have. And so I think that's what gets us through Arkansas. I think we're going to score more points. I think what did we end up with, 10 last year, and I think we're going to double that or triple that this year, based off of our offense. They don't have Treylon Burks anymore for Arkansas, which I think made up at least 60% of their receiving yards last year, and like a couple touchdowns on us. They got passed on Jalen. Who are they going to do to replace him? Now they can replace him, and there are dudes there. But you're talking about some people that they got to step up to that level. Not that it's not possible, but it's a factor in, and that's not a type of guy that you just replace very easily. When did we replace Evans? Do you remember? I'm still waiting. Maybe we didn't replace Evans. So Mike was a beast, and that type of guy, those generational players or era players are not guys that you just this account for and say so and so is just going to step right up and do that. That doesn't happen like that. It's possible, but not likely. So for what I'm seeing out of Arkansas and Mississippi State, I'd go with right now wins for both. The only loss for Arkansas is that we're playing at Cowboy Stadium. We need to start playing this home and home. So just say my little piece on that real quick. But I think we come away with a W on this one this year. I really do. I think our defense will be surprisingly good despite all the changes. You've heard me talk about the secondary. You know what's getting ready to happen with the defensive line, even though it looks like we replaced it. But our offensive line should be solidified. We should have a solid quarterback one way or another. And our wide receiver room has been upgraded. I know we haven't talked about the tight ends yet, but there's a big battle there, and it looks like the Swede wants to play. There's a bunch of guys that want to play, I'm sure, and there's going to be a knockdown drag out there, so it's a little too early. That's why we haven't talked about it a whole bunch. Chain's going to be solid. Amari Daniel's going to be solid. Whoever else needs to come up, crown over, whatever. Running back, going to get the job done. So I think our offense will be a strength this year, unlike what we thought about it last year. And I think that's going to get us through Arkansas and Mississippi State. We're going to have defensive stops as well. Defense is probably going to make this game either a one-possession game or even a field goal kind of situation where it's that close, but we're maybe still ahead that late. But either that or possibly 2 touchdown scores. I really think that that's a possibility for us in these games this year, depending on how well that defense is going to end up playing. I think we'll put up the points to be able to do it. We do go to Mississippi State this year, and actually ESPN has them slightly favored in their matchup predictor, which is odd. But I think the keys to beating them is just going to be, again, having a mobile QB, something we didn't have last year, putting up a better pass rush. We only had 3 going most of the time. And then we need to be able to read the blitz. One thing that we didn't talk about a lot with Isaiah Spiller is that he was really good at reading the blitz and where it was coming from, outside, inside, and he put a helmet on it each time. He wasn't shy. They're going to do a lot of that the same as Arkansas does, and they're going to send guys left. They're going to send them right. They're going to try and create imbalance. They're going to send their linebackers through different holes, and they're going to just try and come from all different areas to try and either get 2 linemen blocking the same guy and letting one run free, and then that guy maybe runs up the middle between the center and left guard, and then the running back thinks that the pressure's coming from outside, so he steps over, and then you got a guy running free right up the middle. That's the kind of stuff that they're trying to do. So reading that blitz is going to be huge so we can get the time to pass. When we had the time to pass, we did pretty well against them. We just need the time. They were really good at reading the run as well, so when we did that, we didn't see as much success as we had the previous year. So that's my key to both those games, essentially. And I think it's going to happen. I'm not going to shy away from this, thinking that a 2 touchdown score against these guys is what can very likely take place. So through 5 games leading up to Bama, I got us 5-0. Okay, so we're 5-3 through 8, and if we want to be over, we need to get to 9, so we need 4 more wins. So we're going to see if that's going to be the case. Now, Bama's coming up. We're playing them in Tuscaloosa, right? So what is that going to entail? Now, won last year, and if I asked you who is the best team at getting revenge wins, who would you say? I don't think I'd say anybody other than Bama. Thinking about that year after we beat them with Johnny, man, we had to, thinking about the effort that we gave in that game to keep it where we did was something else. And was it either the following year after Johnny left or even 2015, we just got routed. Ooh, not good. And they probably were looking to take that out on us even 2 years later. So, because they didn't get to do it the following year quite like they wanted to. And so then, man, they really gave it to us that one year. Bama's probably the biggest team that I watch out for revenge games there ever will be. They're the most capable of getting revenge whenever they have gotten beaten. And that was a big one last year. So what are some things that you need to look out for when you're going to be watching this game? It's the 6th game of the year. Things are liable to change. So remember these names, but they could be different. Burrows, big guy, huge guy on the defensive line. Will Anderson at linebacker. This is the guy that was going up against, I believe, Fothery this last year, who did an excellent job on him. I watched their spring game. Spring game was very interesting. You'd almost say it was like ours to a degree because we got a lot of flack for this when we were talking about, well, the completions by the QBs weren't so good. And we said, well, it was a windy day. And it was. It was legitimately a windy day. Bama's spring game was wet and it was it wasn't full on sloppy, but it wasn't pretty. So you had a few wet footballs. But the game looked sloppy. I don't want to make bulletin board material. I just want to call it as it is. But I wasn't impressed by the spring game. So take that for what you will. But whenever I look through things, Bryce Young was not accurate. JoJo Earl had quite a few drops. Whenever I watched Jamir Gibbs run the ball, it looked like it was different to me than what the rest were doing. Jamir Gibbs is a running back transfer from Georgia Tech, if you didn't know. When he ran the ball, he ran with purpose, and I was not really seeing the same purpose out of the rest. So that just, it just kind of gets me wondering. It's just something to think about. The line on this game, I think, is right around 16 or 17 at this moment in Bama's favor. Can we cover that again this year? And again, this is going to be at their place. Can we cover that? I'm not probably going to sit here and tell you, I think we can cover that. Do more than cover it. Meaning, like last year, we were the dog, and we would have won if you had bet us on the money line. Okay, so can we cover the spread? Yes, we can cover the spread. That's actually my prediction probably for this game. I think we're probably going to take the L on this one. We are very capable of winning this game, and watch out. I would put Alabama on upset alert for this game. Don't get me wrong. But I see this game as being close. They'll probably maybe pull it out in the end. They're at home. They've got one of the best defenses they've probably are likely to have had this coming year, which is going to make it very tough. It's a good year for us to have a better offense, but they have their ways about going to making offenses look pedestrian. So if we struggle to put up more than about 20 points, it's going to be a very difficult game to win, and that looks like that's shaping up to be the case. So I think we keep this game close. We end up losing, but watch out. Watch out. This is definitely an upset game. I'm going to be looking into seeing when's the last time that Alabama lost 2 in a row to the same team. Hopefully it's to us, but the spring game gives me pause for concern. Just saying. We'll see how things play out. Maybe want to look at those first 2 games again that we play and just see how dialed in we are. Maybe when we play Miami, we route them pretty good. Okay, now we're starting to talk. Maybe we take care of business handily with Arkansas and Mississippi State, and make it look like it was, just a hand ride if I'm, watching a Secretariat, run at the Belmont Stakes and winning by 14 lengths. So doing something like that, you can just go and up the bar for upset alert, okay? So I'm going to leave you right there because we'd be here all night trying to dissect all these games. But hopefully you got some good nuggets out of this so that you can kind of have an idea about where you think things are going to fall. Right now, I have us at 5-1 after Bama week. We're going to get a bye after that, and then we're going to go to South Carolina. We're going to have Ole Miss and Florida at home. Florida again. Auburn, going to play UMass, and then LSU. So we'll get to those games next week because we've been here quite a bit already. Now, what I would like to do is talk to you about some of the records that are likely to take place. And you're going to pause the video for a moment and just think to yourself, who do we have currently that current player who are in the record books? Now, technically they are depending on how far down in the record books you want to go. But let's just say, in general, who do we have that are, our length in our program is not changing. So who is likely to make it in there and or who's already on there? So think to yourself for a minute, who do we have that's currently playing that's already in there for one reason or another? So just think on that for a couple seconds. I'll tell you this though, we have 11 guys currently on roster that are in these record books for one way or another. So here they are. See how many you get. We've got Devon Achane, Anais Smith, Nick Constantino, Miles Jones, Haynes King, Moose, Chase Lane, Damani, Tyreek Chappelle, Edrin Cooper, and Jalen Jones. So let me run you through some of the reasons why they made it in. Some of these you'd be like, well, really, that's a record? You can do those kinds of things? Well, you can. Like, for instance, Tyreek, Jalen, Cooper, and Damani, one of the things that they're in there for is having the most solo tackles in a season by a freshman, okay? You might not have thought off the bat we were looking at records by freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior, but they are in there. They are of note. I think freshman's probably a little bit more something to denote rather than sophomore or junior, but they're there. They're in there with the likes of Dat Nguyen and Jackson Appel. So I'd like to have my name next to Dat. He's got a Chick-fil-A store somewhere here in the DFW area, so I go over there, and that's about as close as I get. Moose Muhammad, most receiving TDs by a freshman. I had to go back and check this. So it's like, most receiving TDs. That cannot be the case. Then I figured out again, it was a freshman record, but still, freshman records are nothing to slouch. You can get on the field as a freshman, and he did this with 4. So he's standing next to the likes of Jeff Fuller and Christian Kirk, who have 9 and 8 respectively in their freshman year. So if we get some of the production out of Moose that we're getting out of those guys, that'd be fine by me. My, oh my. Also, Haynes King. Haynes King didn't make it in there. Might not have thought that would have been the case, but he had the most passing yards in a game by a freshman. Now, he's not number 1 in this category. He's in there with Nick Starkel, who had the most, and then Johnny Manziel. And I want to say Starkel had just over 500, and maybe our only guy with plus 500. But Manziel up there. Miles Jones, he is 10th in passes broken up, or pass breakups, if you will, for a career with 28. And this goes back to him starting in 2017. A couple of these records, you're going to have been around for a while for you to get these kinds of records. Those are probably the records that you're thinking of whenever you really think about these records, right? So we got a few of those, but Miles Jones is 10th for pass breakups. In that same category, Sean Weston, he leads the way with, I think, 36 pass breakups. That was back in 2000 to 2003. So, 4 seasons to get that? And Miles has got a bunch as well. I'm not sure what Sean's injury status was throughout that entire thing, but obviously Miles would have more without the injury stuff, but likely would have exhausted his eligibility maybe to this point if it hadn't been for COVID and some other things, but you get the idea. Nick Constantino, he's second highest in net average punting in a season with 43.1 yards. So net punting, you punt it, for instance, his average was 45 yards long, and then he had about a 1.9 yard return average. So the net yards was 43.1, and he's second only to Braden Mann in that category. But he's in there with Shane Leckler. You got his name next to Shane Leckler. My goodness. And overall, he was 7th in season average with that 45. And so that's with the likes also of Drew Kaiser, Braden Mann also being in there, and Shane Leckler. So somewhere in the top 10 for Nick. And that's wow. That's not something I would have quite thought of, but very interesting. So let's move on over here to Devon. Anais is in there with some, and I'm going to cover some of those for Anais next go around. But with Devon, this might give you some of the possibilities for some maybe more high profile records to be broken. And think about some of the names that he's in with. So he's first in yards per carry with 8.5, and he did this in 2020. And I think he had to have something along the lines of, I don't know, maybe was it 50 carries or something for this to count. That's kind of a one-off type of record as well. You're not really looking at yards per carry. You're probably more along the lines thinking of like, okay, who had the most yards in a season or for a career? And those are a bit more of the bigger records that we think of. But he is 41st in career total yards. You have to have over 1,000, I think, even to make it into this club for you to be listed. But I think he's somewhere in the neighborhood of 1472. I might be getting it off. He's got a lot of all-purpose yards as well, not just rushing yards. So those are get me confused when it comes to some of the overlap. But he's 41st there. Darren Lewis is leading the category with 5,000 yards. Darren Lewis, wow. That's almost before my time. Before I was really much of a football fan for sure, back in 87 to like 90, I think. So 4 years to amass 5,000 yards. Now, all-purpose yards, a chain is 14th overall, and he had, I think, 1472 last year, all-purpose. Something along the lines of like 900, I think, rushing. Maybe it was 600 or 700 rushing, a couple hundred receiving, and then he had the punt returns and kickoff returns and those kinds of things, or kickoff returns, because Anais was returning punts. When you are looking at this kind of record, one of the names that should come to mind is Travion Williams. He holds the number one spot with 2,038. And he had, of those 2,038, I think he had 1,760 were rushing yards. So could a chain get up to that kind of total? I don't know. I think back to when Travion got that record, man, we were running him all the time. So yeah, it's possible. I would look at a chain more so for consecutive 100-yard rush games this year. I think he's got a really good shot at getting himself into that type of record. Definitely getting himself into the 1,000-yard season rush club as well, which Isaiah Spiller, I think, did 2-3 years in a row. You're talking about some very, very interesting and fun records when you're talking about that. So we have quite a few guys that could make their way in. Different, sacks, touchdowns in a season, receiving touchdowns, a lot of different ways these guys are getting in there. So we could have some newcomers for sure, and a lot of these guys can move themselves up and really make a name for themselves so that they can be referred to back in the day. And you're going to see them on the field waving their towel, throwing up their gig 'em with their Aggie ring on in 10, 15 years. being welcomed back to Aggie Land with just a raucous cheers and applause. So some interesting names to keep in mind. Next go around too, I think we'll talk about maybe who are some faces that are not already in there and some newcomers who could possibly make their way in there. And then we'll cover the second half of the season and figure out for sure. We're looking at more than 8 wins, 9, 10, 11? Ooh, better drink some Kool-Aid if we're thinking about 11. So, going to be a good time. Again, if you haven't, like and subscribe. We live in a like and subscribe type of world, a share and comment type of world. I'm okay with that. I have no problem with that. If you want to do one or the other, please, by all means, do that. So it's almost like we're having a muster every week. So I love it. I love it. Glad to be here. And then we will see you guys next week, if not before, depending on what news comes up. So until then, thanks and gig 'em.